Hello everybody, thank you for taking the time to listen to this nutrition session as part of the Goalball UK conference this year. For those of you wondering who's this squeaky voiced Mancunian talking to me, my name's Jody and I'm the performance nutritionist with the senior men's Goalball squad. If we've never met before, then hopefully we'll be able to meet sometime in the near future, and I look forward to that. So in today's session, I'm not necessarily going to be talking to you about healthy eating principles, the Eat Well Guide, and what you shouldn't be eating. Instead, I'm going to be talking to you about what you should be eating and the foods and meals which you can consume to maximise your performance on the court. Now, there's going to be some content on the slides, but don't worry about that too much. That's more for me and to remind me to expand upon the points, okay? So instead, sit back, have a listen, and if you've got any questions after this session, then please do get in touch. My details will be made available to you all, okay? So please don't hesitate, and I'll obviously respond to you as soon as I can do. So without further ado, a basic overview of today's session. So the session is going to last up to around 20 minutes, I imagine. First of all, I'm going to start by introducing you to a concept called unleashing the power of food. Then I'm going to cover some quick wins and nutrition strategies which are proven to maximize your performance. And with that, I'll introduce you to two concepts again, one called the 3 T's of fueling and the other the 3 R's of recovery. So nice and simple, memorable nutrition strategies which hopefully you can start to implement from the get-go. Before we finish, having worked with the men's squad for this year now, I know how frustrating it is in the kitchen, especially for the older athletes looking to progress and move on with their lives now. So in there, I've put my top 5 pieces of kitchen equipment which I think are going to be useful for you moving forwards in learning a life skill in cooking and being confident in the kitchen. So let's get this party started. So, unleashing the power of food, what do I mean by that term? And I guess instead of just putting food in our mouths because we need it to survive, or just because it tastes good, it's important as athletes to start to think about how is this meal or how is this food going to help me, okay? So ask yourself, what am I trying to achieve at this mealtime? And is this food playing a role in achieving that? So that might be, is it helping me recover quicker? Is this meal going to help me fuel? Is it going to provide me with the energy I need for training or a match? Is it going to please my mind? Is there a lot of taste and variety on the plate? And is it going to help my health overall? So yes, try to get into the habit of that. So there's 4 food groups which I've created. So there's the Go group, the Grow, the Glow, and the Guard group. So Go, Grow, Glow, Guard. That's a mouthful. And each food group has a superpower, and each plays a different role on the body. Now, members of the general population are obsessed with trying to cut out food groups and trying to be part of a diet culture, whether that's a keto diet where they're reducing the carbohydrates, a paleo diet, a vegan diet, a vegetarian diet, pescatarian, okay? As goalball athletes, unless you have a medical condition or an intolerance which prevents you from consuming a certain food group or type of food, it's really, really important that you try to include sort of foods from each different food group at each main meal time, okay? So, to begin with, first of all, we've got the Go foods. Now, as you can imagine, these foods are the foods which are going to give you energy during training and matches. These foods are going to help you be explosive on the court. They're going to help you dive down and then get back up again as quickly as possible. They're going to help you sustain the energy to last a full match or to last over an hour's training session. These foods are the foods which are going to fuel your muscles and help them contract and ensure that you're not tiring too quickly. Okay, so these foods are carbohydrates. So this includes things like bread, pasta, bagels, couscous even, wraps, pita breads maybe, rice, oats, potatoes, and then quinoa or quinoa, however you pronounce it, wherever you're from in the country. Okay, so that's the Go group. So think Go is carbohydrates. Carbohydrates equals energy, equals performance. Okay, next up is the Grow group. So these foods are going to help repair any muscle fibers which are broken down during exercise. So whenever you're propelling the ball down the court, you're damaging your muscles during exercise. Whenever you're lifting weights, you're purposively damaging your muscles. Now, we need to eat these Grow foods to ensure that we can repair those muscles and that we can sort of make new muscle fibers to grow our muscles as well. So I recommend that you consume these foods at each main meal time. So if it's breakfast, lunch and your evening meal. And these foods are also fantastic as a snack before bed and also mid-morning as well. Too often do people have really high sugar, high fat snacks. But yeah, we should be focusing on protein rich snacks. So these are foods which are like chicken, fish, red meat. You possibly could boil some eggs as a snack. You could have dairy foods like a glass of milk. You could have a yogurt, whether that's skyr yogurt, if you've ever heard of that before, Greek yogurt, any natural yogurt. And then we've also got alternative meat protein sources, which a lot of vegans consume now. So tofu, soya, you've got corn. Then you've also got things like beans and lentils in there. And baked beans, yes, are also a protein source as well. The third group is the Glow foods. Now these foods are rich in antioxidants. So what that means is that they help protect your body when it's placed under stress. So believe it or not, when you're exercising, your body is being placed under what we call oxidative stress. So this also might be after long tournaments. You might have muscle soreness, you might have achy legs, you might be a little bit sore to touch. That's because your body's a little bit damaged after the exercise, which is completely normal. Okay, these foods will also provide you with the vital vitamins and minerals that you need to glow on a daily basis, as well as containing a lot of fibre, which is going to help your digestive system sort of digesting and absorbing the foods and the nutrients from the foods. Now you might have guessed, but the Glow foods are fruit and vegetables. Okay, I've also placed water within this category, as it's important to not neglect staying hydrated. Also, believe it or not, our bodies are around 60% water. So if we're dehydrated quite often, we're putting more stress on our body and more stress on our organs to function. Our body needs water to survive more than it does food, okay? So make sure you always try to stay on top of your water intake each day. A good tip is to have a pint of water when you wake up, and then at each main meal time, also have a pint of water. When you're exercising, and if you're exercising indoors and in the heat, but particularly in the doors for you guys, you're also going to be sweating a bit more. So you're going to need even more water than any typical person that's sat at home, okay? Now, the final group is the guard foods, okay? The guard group. These foods protect your nerves, essentially, so that your brain can pass signals down to your muscles, which help you to make quick decisions, okay? They'll also transport the vitamins and minerals that we get from the Glow foods around the body, and and they also act as a fuel source on a daily basis. So these foods are fats, so that includes things like olive oil, avocados, hummus, eggs, nuts, nut butter, so things like peanut butter, cashew butter, almond butter, full fat dairy, and red meat. The difference between fats and carbohydrates and protein is that fats are more than double the amount of calories than carbohydrates and protein. So fats are essential for our health, for the things I've just mentioned. However, as athletes, we don't want to have too much fat, as it may lead to excess weight gain. And I can imagine, well, I've tried, it's quite difficult on the goalball court, every 10 seconds, getting up and down, up and down, up and down. So that excess weight is not going to be advantageous for us when carbohydrates and protein are really, really important for goalballers, okay? So, moving on. As I said though, goalball athletes shouldn't be looking to remove any food groups. Try to have a varied diet and include all of these different food groups. So go, grow, glow, and guard. Try to remember it like that. Moving on now then. So when it comes to fueling training and matches, the most common questions I get from athletes are what should I eat, when should I eat it, and how much should I be eating? These are known as the 3 T's of fueling. So when to eat is timing, what to eat is the type, and then how much is total. So we have timing, type, and total. So let's start with timing. Everyone digests and absorbs food at different rates. It's highly individual, so no two people are the same. Eating too close to exercise is probably going to cause you to get a stitch. You're probably going to feel sluggish and lethargic, especially as we say, the nature of goalball is up and down, up and down. It's not the type of sport you want to have a stitch with. On the other hand, eating too far away from exercise is probably going to make you feel hungry. And I don't know about you, but when I'm hungry, I'm hangry. So your mind is going to be occupied elsewhere rather than on your performance. The best time to have a meal is around 3 hours before your training or a match. However, there is a range of between 2 to 4 hours. As I say, it's very individual. 4 hours for me personally is way too far away. 2 hours is too soon. I've found the 3 hour mark is the sweet spot for me. And if you need a top up snack in the hour before, then that's absolutely fine also. So as I say, for some of you, that may be too long. So 2 hours may be better. If you're rushing though before training and you only have 1 to 2 hours to eat something, always recommend having a smaller portion. That way it'll take less time to digest and it's not going to sit as heavy on your stomach. So we'll get on to what sort of things you might want to consume shortly. Next up is the type of food. So when you do have up to 3 hours before training or a match to consume a really nutritious meal, you want it to be high in those go foods. So if you remember, those foods are the carbohydrate-rich foods, which are going to provide you with the energy and the fuel for training. Then having a source of protein alongside these go foods is going to help stabilize your blood sugar levels throughout until you train. And naturally, we want this food or meal to be low in fat as well. If we're consuming really fatty foods in this pre-training meal, then you're gonna feel sluggish. It's going to sit in your stomach for longer. It's going to take longer to digest and absorb, and it's not going to be providing you with the quick energy supply which you need for your goalball performance. Now, as I say, I'm going to get into some examples in a minute, but moving on to the final T, which is total. or how much. So total really depends on many variables, including a player's body weight, the exercise duration, the intensity of the exercise, and more. Okay, but a good rule of thumb is the harder and longer that you train, the more goal foods you will need before, during, and after training. So think of filling up a car with petrol before setting off on a journey. If you start with a full tank of fuel, you'll be able to travel further. If you start with low fuel levels, however, you're not going to be able to travel as far, or you're going to need to top up. So it's exactly the same with athletes and our human body, okay? So if you begin a training session with high fuel levels, i.e. you've eaten a lot of carbohydrates, you'll be able to train harder and for longer before you tire. If you begin with low fuel levels in your tank though, you're going to tire more easily and you're going to perform below your potential. So my question to you is, do you want to be a Ferrari or not? Okay. Now, a really simple method for you to use for implementing this is, if you imagine your plate is a clock, okay? 12 o'clock's at the top of the plate, 6 o'clock's at the bottom, okay? From working clockwise, from 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock, I want you to fill your plate with carbohydrates on training days. So half of your plate should be filled with carbohydrates. So this might be things, as we mentioned earlier, rice, potato, couscous, quinoa, oats, spicy rice packets. It might be cereal, anything, bread, wraps, bagels, whatever it may be, spaghetti even, okay? That's your fuel sorted. And I want you to do that at each main meal time on a training day. Then from 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock, that's where your protein source goes. So it might be eggs, it might be red meat, it might be chicken, it might be fish. Don't forget you've got both white fish like cod and haddock, or you've got oily fish like salmon, trout, mackerel, sardines, very cheap. And then you've also got your non-meat alternatives. So whether it's soya, if it's tofu, if it's corn, whatever it may be. And then finally, working from 9 o'clock back to 12 o'clock, that's where your veggies are going to go. So your glow foods, okay? They're going to help with your fibre intake and helping you to digest the food. So that's a really, really simple method which you can all use and implement as of today for your goalball training. So some examples of pre-training meals might be, if it's early morning, you might go for something like cereals with milk and yogurt. I don't necessarily just mean Cocoa Pops, Frosties, all the really high sugar cereals. You know, you'll be better with something like muesli, oats, Weetabix, shredded wheat, all bran flakes, something like that. At a push, go for the Cheerios or something. Alternatively, you might have something like baked beans on toast. To me, baked beans on toast is the king of breakfast. Before I play football, baked beans on toast sorts me out and keeps me full for longer as well. But there's plenty of fuel in that for you. Other options might be porridge, or if some of you may have heard of overnight oats. So essentially that's just cold porridge. So you make it up the night before, put it into a Tupperware box or a bowl and place it in the fridge, and then you can take it out of the fridge in the morning when you're ready to eat it. This is really good tool if you're a busy person, if you're a student and you need to get to classes, or you need to go to training early doors. Some more options might be scrambled eggs on a bagel, a tomato-based pasta dish, maybe chicken or tuna wraps, a simple stir fry. And I know it can be frustrating, as I mentioned earlier, in the kitchen, but you can get stir fry pre-made packets from the supermarket as well, where your veggies are already chopped for you to make it less hassle. Alternatively, if you're the type of person who struggles with nerves before training or matches, you might want to go for a liquid option instead. So something like a berry, banana and oat-based smoothie would be a really, really good option for getting all those carbohydrates in you for fuel. Then, as I mentioned, if you're the type of person where you've got enough time to have a meal up to 3 hours before training or a match, then you might want to have a snack before or during training. So again, you want this to be higher in carbohydrates. So something like a small juice box with a banana. It might be a jam bagel or honey on a bagel. It might be some fig rolls, a bit of a sweet treat, but really high in carbohydrates and also rich in potassium and other electrolytes, which are going to be beneficial for keeping you hydrated. You can get little pots of rice pudding, or alternatively fresh fruit, cereal bars, nuts and seeds, and so on and so on. Okay. Now, moving on to hydration. One of the biggest advantages that you can have over your opponent is simply being hydrated. So when you play goalball, as I mentioned earlier, it's an indoor sport. It can be hot in the sports halls when you're playing. And also, you know, as I say, the nature of goalball, getting up and down every 10 seconds and then launching a really heavy ball down the court, you're bound to sweat a lot. And as you sweat, you're losing fluid from your body. So this fluid needs replacing. If you don't, you might experience some of the negative effects of dehydration. And some of these might be physical stresses like headaches, feeling very hot and bothered. You might lack in energy. You might feel dizzy or lightheadedness. You might be short of breath and you might have a dry mouth, okay? So these are the different warning signs which I want you to be aware of when you're playing, before and after as well, so that you know at that point you need to stop and you need to take on some fluids, okay? It's not just the physical stresses that might be impaired, but you've also got performance consequences. So when you're dehydrated, the slightest bit of dehydration has been shown to reduce your power, your speed, your strength. It's going to make you more tired. It's going to make you lack concentration, and it's going to make you have poor decisions on court, which is obviously not beneficial for you or for your teammates. So with that in mind, it's important to have a few strategies in place to help prevent dehydration. So the first term I like to use is start hydrated, stay hydrated. And what I mean by that is, before you even start training or have a match, are you consuming water leading up? So are you consuming maybe up to 500 millilitres or a bottle of water before you start training? Then during training, are you taking the rest opportunities to consume some fluid? Now, when you are consuming the fluid, it's important at the same time that you don't overdrink. Otherwise, I'm sure we've all experienced it. You get a swishy belly, and it can cause bloating. Again, less than ideal for a goalball player who's getting up and down across a court. So ideally, you want to try and drink little and often. Just take on frequent sips, and train your body to drink. Okay, so just like we train our muscles when exercising, we have to train our body to be able to drink, and we also have to train our gut to be able to handle food before exercise as well. Okay, so some people completely neglect it, say I can't eat anything before and I can't drink anything or during exercise. But it's a matter of training your body to be able to do so, because if you don't, you are going to suffer some of the consequences. Okay? Important point is enjoy what you're going to be drinking. If not, it's unlikely that you're going to drink it. So if you don't like water, have juice. You can even create your own sports drink, which is lower in sugar compared to supermarket ones. So you can add a bit of fresh orange juice, some water, and a little pinch of salt, and you've got your own homemade sports drink. Okay? Now, moving on to the 3 R's of recovery. So, the sooner you engage in the immediate recovery phase, so the sooner you consume fluid and the sooner you consume food after training or a match, the best chance you're giving yourself of performing at your best again sooner. So this is really important for when you're playing in tournaments. And I've got another video as part of this conference which is going to look at how you can nutritionally prepare for tournaments. So it's going to be very practical, provide you with a lot of food and fluid examples in there, okay? Whereas this is a little bit more informative. So the 3 R's of recovery. Number 1, you need to rehydrate with fluids. Okay, so all the fluid that's been lost during the game or the training, you need to replace it plus some more. The second R is refuel with carbohydrates. So these are gonna refuel your tank, refuel your energy stores, just like going to the petrol station and refilling your car up, okay? As I said earlier, it's the same for athletes and for humans, okay? We need to go and refill our tanks so that we can then gain more energy again, and so that you can recover quicker before your next session. The third R is repair. So we repair our muscles with protein. I mentioned earlier that every time we're exercising, we're damaging our muscles. So if we don't consume the growth foods, the protein foods, you're not going to repair those muscles, and you're certainly not going to build new muscle, which is what we're trying to achieve, to be as athletic goalball players as possible. So a really quick win, which covers all 3 R's of the recovery phase, is a low-fat flavoured milkshake. Not only is that seen as a treat after training or match, it certainly is for me, but it's also the ultimate recovery choice for not only rehydrating, but also refueling and repairing. So milk naturally contains electrolytes and it's a fluid source. So that's the rehydration ticked off. It also contains carbohydrates from the natural sugar lactose which is in it. So that's the refueling ticked off. And it also, milk is naturally a high source of protein. Okay, so a pint of milk or a bottle, something like a Yazoo, a fridge, or even Nesquik if you want to do a homemade one. A low-fat flavoured milkshake is the perfect choice after an intense, tough goalball session. Depending on how far you're travelling to and from training or matches, if you're close by, you probably want to just have the milkshake within 30 minutes if possible, and then consume something later when you get home, an actual meal that's a bit more substantial. But it's good to know that refueling is 3 times quicker if you consume something like a milkshake in the first 2 hours after training and matches. It's even quicker if you can pack it in your bag and have it within 30 minutes after your session. So as soon as you finish your session, if you can get into the habit of just going into your kit bag, getting out your milkshake, maybe a banana or a piece of fruit, then that's going to help you recover even quicker, okay? And replace those energy stores. Okay, and the last part of today's session, or this nutrition session, whichever time or day you're listening to it, I'm going to cover my top 5 pieces of kitchen equipment to increase productivity for you and creativity in the kitchen. As I mentioned at the start, I've realised how frustrating it can be for visually impaired individuals to cook in the kitchen. And not just practical wise, but also not everyone's as confident in the kitchen. Not everyone sees themselves as a Gordon Ramsay in the kitchen. So I can understand why it's common for most people to just go to the supermarket and purchase convenient processed meals, as opposed to spending the time to learn and to make their own meals. Hopefully these few pieces of kitchen equipment will help sort of make the process a little less painful for you and tedious in terms of preparing and cooking meals. And you don't need all the singing and dancing gadgets, just some good quality pieces. But my recommendation is the sooner you can get stuck in the kitchen and become familiar with the equipment and start following recipes, the better your future is going to be in terms of consuming nourishing meals and also learning a life skill which is going to take you through your life. Okay, so my top 5 pieces of equipment. Number 1, we've got a good quality non-stick frying pan. So brand wise, something like a Tefal, Tefal. They're a good quality pan which doesn't require tons of oil to be added, and they're a good investment that's going to last you a few years. So you're not only saving on the calories, but you're also saving money in the back pocket there as well. At number 2, I've got a chopping board with a gripper. So whether you're a visually impaired individual or not, this is an essential piece of kit for anyone in the kitchen, in my opinion. If you've not used one before, it's essentially a chopping board block which has grooves on top, enabling sort of meats, chicken, fish and vegetables from sliding about whilst you're chopping, as that can get very frustrating and it's also not very safe. So this groove or this gripper is like a much needed safety mechanism, considering you require as many fingers as possible really for playing goalball. Down at number 3, I've got a good set of sharp knives. So it's probably important at this point to say a good finger guard would be highly recommended if you don't have one. But in this case, I'm going to assume that you do. If you don't do the cooking, as I say, try get in the kitchen and start learning. But a good set of knives is going to save you time when chopping, dicing and slicing your food produce. I quite like the Kitchen Devils knives, which you can find in most major supermarkets, and they're also not too pricey, but they do a great job. So yeah, get yourself some of those. I've recently seen something called a clever cutter that's come out this week as well. I'm not sure if anyone's seen it, but instead of separate knives, this is essentially a set of knives which are connected like scissors. So it has a grip on it for safety when you're holding the scissors. But rather than chopping your food on a chopping board, you can simply hold the piece of chicken or meat with a fork and you can cut it straight into a pan. And similarly, you can do the same for your vegetables, cucumber for salads, tomatoes, courgettes, mushrooms, peppers, whatever it may be. You can pretty much cut anything with these clever cutter scissors. Okay, so I think these are currently retailing at £11.99. I found them for. But the beauty with this device is that you also are reducing the amount of washing up that you've got to do afterwards, which can also be very frustrating. So yeah. Down at number 4, I've got a vegetable chopper. So if you're the type of person that's really short of time and you're not so confident in the kitchen, maybe you're starting out, a veg chopper could potentially become your new best friend, really. All you do is you simply add the ingredients to the chopper and it splits them into small pieces so you can add it straight to meals, sauces and salads. And typically you probably want one which has around a 500 milliliter capacity. Finally, at number 5, and this isn't necessarily in an order, by the way, but at number 5, I've got a smoothie machine. Something like a Nutri Ninja or a NutriBullet I've found to be good quality, and it's likely going to cost anywhere in the region of £25 to £80. Unless you've got the big money for a Vitamix food processor, which it really does do everything, but they also really do cost a lot of money. I think you pay about £500 for a Vitamix for a good one. But yeah, a smoothie machine can still make sauces. Some of them even do ice creams, and they have different functions. So they really are a great tool, especially for you guys when you're exercising a lot and you need to eat more food. So yeah, a smoothie machine would be definitely at the top of my recommendation. Also, if you're busy and you don't have the time to have a sit-down meal, or if you're really, really rubbish at eating fruit and vegetables, then hiding them in a smoothie machine is a great tactic. I've put a Brucey bonus down at the bottom, a talking temperature gauge. Now, I've seen these, and some of the senior men's squad use these. It's not always safe, to touch the food once you've cooked it, because it can be really hot. So that's not really recommended. So you can purchase a talking temperature gauge, which can ensure that things like your chicken, your meat is cooked well through, so that you're not worried about getting any food poisoning or eating raw food. You can get these from the R&IB website on the online shop. They do sometimes have a lot of deals on, so I would recommend that you keep an eye on the R&IB online shop for things like veg peelers, scales, talking scales, any pieces of kitchen equipment which is going to assist you and make the whole process less painful and demoralising, really. What I will do is I have a sheet which contains some links to some of these pieces of kitchen equipment. If it's going to be useful, I can send that out. I'll get Steve to send that out to everybody, so they can simply click the links and purchase the equipment as and when they need it. Okay, to summarise then from this session, as I mentioned at the very start, as goalball athletes, you want as much of a varied diet as possible. Unless you've got a medical condition or an intolerance, don't be excluding any food group from your diet. Each food group has a role in the body, and it's important that we keep it as varied as possible. So keep remembering and being mindful of the go foods, carbohydrates, the grow foods, protein, the glow foods, fruit, vegetables and water, and the guard foods, which are going to help protect you, which is the fats. Okay. Next, consume a meal which is high in carbohydrates, so the go foods, moderate in protein, grow, and low in fat. And you want to aim to have that 2 to 4 hours before a training session or a match. Very individual, but what I would recommend is that you trial and error before your next lot of training sessions, as and when they start moving forwards. In terms of hydration, the best advice I can give is to start hydrated and to stay hydrated, okay? So make sure that you're consuming water before training, and you don't leave it too late that when you get to training, then you're starting exercising, you're losing fluid, and you start to experience dehydration. If your mouth's already dry and you experience some of the warning signs like headaches, feeling too hot, tiredness, lethargic, etc., lightheadedness, then it's too late, okay? You need to stop and you need to consume some fluids. In terms of your recovery after training and matches, you should try and aim to rehydrate, refuel and repair your muscles. So the 3 R's of recovery. And as I mentioned, a flavoured milkshake and some fruit is an ideal option, unless you are travelling from quite a distance to training. But I'm going to be providing a lot more practical options in the next session for you, okay? And then finally, as best as you can, try to learn a life skill in cooking as early as possible, just to increase your confidence, especially if you're moving out as you get older, and also to set yourself up to be a sustainable goalball player and individual moving forwards. So that's it from me for this nutrition session. Thank you very much for tuning in. Hopefully you didn't fall asleep after the first slide, but if you did, at least you can go back and listen to this recording now. Thank you very much, and I look forward to giving you advice around tournament nutrition very shortly. If anyone has any questions, please do get in touch. As I say, I'm more than willing to answer, okay? Take care, everybody. Thank you.